The Sopranos is considered one of the greatest science fiction shows of all time, as mob boss Tony Soprano must do battle with shape-shifting Persian monarchs, laser beams shooting out of the eyes of Larry David impersonators, and walking, talking parade floats. I've been making videos on The Sopranos for years now. I know what you're thinking.
Still going, this asshole!
Maybe you haven't watched my channel in a while and this video popped up on your feed and you're thinking to yourself,
holy fucking shit, that thing is still alive?
But we're still discussing all things Sopranos and I'm definitely not slowing down. Qu'est-ce que c'est, man? Subscribe button broken? Hit that thing down below and consider supporting the channel through Patreon or channel membership. There's a scene in the episode Fortunate Son that has stayed with me for a while and I've got an itch to talk about it. AJ, as we know, is one of the most insufferable characters on the show. An entitled, weak, coddled mama's boy, AJ never seemed to appreciate how much he was given on a plate. Combine his negative traits with the schizophrenic parenting style of Tony and Carmela and Mr. Type A personality's personality. It's no wonder the boy has a lack of drive, ambition or gratitude. But in this episode, we see a rare instance of Tony being proud of his son when AJ recovers a fumble in the football game. It's a moment of such purity that time itself slows down for Tony to savor it, even if it means we have to endure him sounding like a disorientated bear. Mr. Mobboss turns to two Medigans and proudly declares that that's his son, and we cut to father and son going home. Tony praising AJ and giving him tips from his youth as a varsity athlete. Tony says he and AJ will go and get hot dogs, but AJ just wants to go home. And when Tony relents, AJ asks him if he wants to play Nintendo, you and me. To which Tony replies,
when are you gonna throw that friggin' thing out the friggin' window?
AJ then does accept Tony's offer, putting a smile back on Tony's face. Now at face value, this does come across as a proud father wanting to reward his son for his hard work with some bonding, and AJ as usual being distant and ungrateful. But consider the fact that AJ isn't really enthusiastically pumping up his achievement on the pitch simply because the football isn't as important to him as it is for Tony. Perhaps if Tony had no interest in sport, AJ might not have even joined the team. What we're witnessing here is AJ doing something that makes Tony happy, and Tony then wanting to celebrate in the way that makes him happy. And when AJ offers to just go home and then include his dad in the post-game celebrations by playing Nintendo, his suggestion is chastised by Tony. Playing Nintendo might seem childish for a guy of AJ's age, but Nintendo with his father might just be the best memory AJ has of with his dad. It harks back to the two playing the console in season 1, Tony screwing with AJ covering his eyes. It's such a wholesome moment, one of the few in the series, and AJ no doubt remembers it as such. Instead, what we are witnessing is AJ internalizing his father's wants and desires at the expense of his own wishes, which is part of a process where AJ's personality gets overridden with that of his domineering narcissist of a father. Has AJ ever really had a proper chance to explore a hobby that he wants to do which isn't influenced by Tony, I wonder, at least by this point in the show? He didn't even want to play football. In the beginning of the scene, he is on the bench looking completely uninterested, and later the duo are having what looks like a quintessentially father and son moment, eating and watching the game with no fucking ZD, but AJ dips at the first chance he gets, using the excuse that he can watch the game in the car on the way to visit Meadow. He is unable to say to his father that he simply isn't interested, and Tony fails to pick up on any of the signals because he's not in tune with what AJ wants. It isn't about AJ, it's about him. The infatuation with the sport is being spurred on by a man who no doubt has to live vicariously through his own boy to tackle his demons, to stop Mr. Magoo popping up in his nightmares, teasing him about having small hands. AJ's only doing it to win Tony's approval. And it does win his approval, as we see shortly after Brainless II spills milk, and where Tony would usually shout the house down. I mean, this is the guy who had that horrific vasectomy line after AJ spilled some food. Instead, Tony is encouraging, telling AJ to pour himself some more because he needs strong bones for future games. Tony is accepting and encouraging of AJ only when he is what Tony wants him to be. Perhaps AJ consciously or even subconsciously has picked up on the fact that his parents are more accepting when he, instead of growing into his own desires and wants, instead follows his parents' wishes. But given his parents are always split on decision making, like the military school, whatever happened there, it leads to a confused and directionless child. So we're witnessing AJ repressing himself in real time. There's a small transition scene, and in the very next scene we see an example of his father's comments that AJ has already internalized. When Tony brings up AJ wanting to go to Harvard or West Point, AJ is horrified at the idea, saying he could never get in. But in the season 2 episode, Full Leather Jacket, AJ did say he wanted to go to Harvard or West Point, and immediately Tony threw cold water at it right away, citing AJ's grades. So either AJ is lying because he's embarrassed that he felt he could get into Harvard, or he has internalized Tony's feelings about college to such an extent he doesn't even remember that his own personal desire was to go to one of these colleges. Tony wouldn't have even considered his comment a big deal at the time, but clearly it had enough impact that the idea sunk into AJ's head and resigned him to the fact that these colleges were just out of his reach. Maybe there's more to AJ's lack of ambition than just his own immediate laziness. And even if you think that there's nothing harsh in what Tony said, he was being real with AJ, and there's much worse things parents have said to their kids, which is a valid opinion, there is still that aroma of sadness to this scene. This family which is starting to irreversibly change as a unit, and the family members who are also changing and forgetting the people they once were. Carmela says she doesn't want this family to turn into one that eats grilled cheese off the radiator, but Meadow's already gone, and AJ's transitioning from being our happy little boy to a directionless and cynical young adult who, as we see, can no longer relate to his old self, his old wants, and that's if he can even remember them. At Meadow's college, AJ steps out and looks utterly befuddled at his environment. The camera follows a woman wearing a hijab, an image completely alien to AJ, and as he later says, they're all a bunch of freaks. The point I'm making is that these little moments in the show all build and develop AJ to his Van Helsing era of season 6. They're a representation of him as a man, and a representation of a generation with no sense of direction or purpose, as I touched upon more in my video Why We're Wrong About AJ. Since we're talking about Fortunate Son anyway, there's a lot in this episode about responsibility and leadership. Dr. Milfy, for example, talking about Johnny Boy bringing home the bacon, and that Tony's first panic attack may have been in part because he knew one day it would be his responsibility. This is something AJ, like Tony, is unable to handle, crashing to the floor as a humorous punchline crescendo to the week's episode after his coach plays him up as becoming a leader one day in front of the team. Tony is faced with becoming a leader and he faints. AJ is faced with becoming a leader and he too faints. I guess the turd doesn't fall far from the faggot's ass. The title of the episode is an interesting one. There are many sons dealt with in this episode, but which of them is fortunate? In addition to Tony, we have Chrissy being made. He is a surrogate son to Tony, fortunate due to nepotism. But that idea of being fortunate is juxtaposed by the reality on the ground that being made is not all it's cracked up to be. Jackie Jr., the heir apparent, is also given a lot of focus in this episode. The fortunate son of a mob boss who wants to follow in the footsteps of his father, and he's unable to foster a pathway outside of the mob. Perhaps true fortune in his case would have been being born to a baker or an Elvis impersonator. Chrissy is all the way into the life. Jackie Jr. is somewhere in between. And then we have the fortunate son of AJ, who has all of his materialistic needs taken care of, but is unable to find himself because he replaces his wants and desires with that of his dad's. Even Carmine Sr., his first appearance on the show in this episode, acts like something of a father to Tony, advising him to take care of his panic attack issues. We see an interesting chain in action too, which Paulie references with his "so it goes on this thing of ours" conversation with Chrissy. Dino thinks Jackie Jr. is cool, but Jackie looks like an idiot trying to validate himself in front of Chris. Chris looks cool and collected as a newly made man arriving at the pizza parlor. But he's a mess when confronted with paying up to Paulie. Paulie is authoritative and administrative in his dealings with Chris, but he's humble and subservient when kicking up to Tony in the restaurant. And Tony is domineering over all of his underlings, all of these fortunate sons. But when he's with Carmine, he bows his head. He acts all subservient. And so it goes on, this thing of ours. A major theme of this episode is the idea of being a provider and the legacy that is handed down from father to son. There's even a throwaway line during the dinner scene where Rosalie says Ralph had to drop out of 11th grade to raise his brothers and sisters. There's one scene after another with supposed mentorship taking place with men and their underlings. Tony meeting with Jackie Jr. at the restaurant, Tony talking with Chrissy at the barbecue, the Tony and AJ scenes, and several scenes of Paulie being a mentor to Chris. Weirdly, Uncle Junior has a single brief appearance where he looks miserable and tells Bobby Bacalao to leave him the fuck alone. But seeing as though they're watching the game, something Tony and AJ don't end up completely doing, perhaps the implication is that Junior and Bobby do actually have a genuine father and son relationship. What? You telling me you never pondered that? Is it a stretch to compare AJ's conversation about Nintendo with Johnny Boy talking to young Tony after he sees him cut off old man Satrial's pinky? In both scenes, we have two kids who are uncomfortable with their situation, but after a conversation with their domineering fathers, they end up accepting the parents' way of thinking. AJ deciding to go out and eat with Tony, and young Tony successfully being gaslit by Johnny Boy. I want to go back to AJ collapsing. Of course, one of the things it shows is that he's got that putrid fucking Sopranos gene and is a gump who freaks out when faced with responsibility. But given we're supposed to draw parallels to Tony's flashback, is this AJ malfunctioning because he is being compared to his father and knows that he isn't cut out for it? It was Tony who got him to embrace football, and now that AJ has gotten a measure of success in it, it could lead down a pathway to living up to his father's image in ways that go beyond football. Much like how Johnny Boy tells Tony that he's proud of him, that others would have run like a little girl at seeing him torture and disable a man. And what with the resulting Satrial meat deliveries, young Tony is faced with the fact that his father will only approve of him if he emulates his father. So maybe AJ was thinking deep down if this is the beginning of him emulating his father, given that at this point in the series he now knows his father is a mob boss. Is he afraid that one day he will have to run a crime family? That's dicked up. There's another possibility I wanted to discuss about AJ at the football game. He gets banged up pretty hard, and then the audio visuals get distorted, which we can infer is how things are appearing to AJ. Is it possible he simply got a concussion, and no one noticed it, and that's why he was spaced out the entire episode? It seems like his mind is elsewhere during the dinner scene. He forgets what he said about Harvard and West Point, he spills the milk, he asks who's on the phone after Calm said it's Meadow, and doesn't even notice Carmela talking to him. It would be a pretty apt summarization of AJ's childhood for him to have gotten a concussion here and his parents not noticing it because they're too wrapped up in what they want from AJ. The only problem with this theory is that it's difficult to tell the difference between normal AJ and a concussed AJ. Oh, rim shot! So what do you make of AJ's scenes in Fortunate Son? Let me know in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel and thanks for watching.